Thank you very much. I like to have support, and she's a great support to me. When we used to live on Wayaki Way, and we used to think we are doing well for ourselves, and I was telling her from here, mambo ni Karen, and she believed it. You know, nowadays it's very hard to katiana, eh? You can't think it's a girl's box. Because now every girl is living in Karen, they have a 4x4. Now you're wondering, how do you lie to them? So I told Antamtoa 87 Impeleke Karen. And somehow, by God's grace, I'll make sure that this pastor does not lie, but he also doesn't overpromise, yes. So nilimleta loa Karen, tukaishi hapa Ongata Rongai. And Sinukweli, when you go down this road, you go into Karen, Sindio, Cooperative College, Sindio. Yeah. So we came into Rongai, and she graciously agreed. We served on Langata Road for a while when I was living here, and then came here. Then in our time, I told her, now I'm not moving you again. Ever. We'll stay here until we'll build our business here. We'll build, yani hiyo mambo ya kanisa, I promise I'll not make you suffer again about going to a church. And then one day I woke up and I told her, Yani, you see the place I rescued you from? I hear God is sending us there. I don't know how she managed and how she still manages. So we went back to where I got her from. That's Karagita, the KAG church. So we are grateful to be there. But we also together serve at Kenya Youth for Christ, which allows us to have a national impact as well as maintain our local impact in the church. So we are grateful to be part of you guys and to have come from here. Asanteni sana for inviting us. They decided they'll take the good topics. And you see, strategically, Zach is not here. So they decided, we'll talk about storms. You know me, I have very good illustrations for storms. We can talk about the whirlwinds, Katrina, and all those things. Those ones I know. And then in terms of betrayal, also I've had some serious breakups. Those ones I have also nice, sumptuous illustrations to be able to share with people and make them laugh and make them come into me. But then they decided, you know what? Let's give this one to Sasino about grief. Let him come and let's see how funny he can be while talking about death. So please pray with me as we do this. But let's bow our heads and pray about this. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity. Father, it's such a privilege to once again be at NCOR, but more so to be talking to your people. Father, I'm not an expert in this. I do not pretend to even know your heart. But Lord, you have allowed us to be here today, that we speak your heart. So Father, minister to us as we do this. Speak through me. Let your Holy Spirit be the one that guides me. Let me decrease as you increase, that your name will be glorified at the end of this. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. Welcome. Yeah. So your sign nasema kweli. So I'm following that one, eh? All right. In my church, we go as the Spirit leads. But then I'll try. When you go to Rome, do as the Romans do. So my story is this. Thank you, Jaffe, for sharing. Thank you also for sharing. I really appreciate that. You know, when we first got married with my wife, and we did 1 year of marriage, we had the opportunity to live together for a while before any of us got a job. And within that period, when we were just celebrating our 1 year, I got a call one day, and it was about my dad. You see, my dad had been sick for a while, and in his sickness, we hadn't seen my dad for some time. My dad had relocated to Shags. They did the whole early retirement thing. He was given his generous package. He went to Shags. And we hadn't seen him for a while. He'd come once in a while, maybe I guess when he was coming to work on his pension things, then he'd go back. So hakuwa anakaa sana. And we got to a place where we had somewhat gotten used to him not being around, even though we deeply, deeply missed him. So once in a while when we'd go on missions and we are going that way, I'd call him and tell him we'd use the road that he's on. So I'd ask him, please simama hapo karibu kwa stage, so that as we are passing, at least I can say hi. So we would stop and I'd say hi to my dad. Needless to say that kuna watu wamejaza van, but nisimama tumsalimie, nimhug, and then we'd be on our way and come back. Then one time my dad came, and he said he's going to be around for a while. So he stayed with us, and okay, we still expected that somehow he would leave, because akimaliza maneno yake anaendaga. But he stayed with us, and he stayed, and he continued to stay until up to about a year. Then I realized, it was because he had a pain on his throat, and they still hadn't figured out what it was. So my dad continued to stay. We enjoyed that he was there. And one day, on March, his birthday, my dad checked himself into a hospital, and my dad never came out. My dad stayed in the hospital, and we began frantically to raise money they needed, there's a thing they call a stent. So they needed to put in like a thing to stabilize his esophagus. That one. So they needed to stabilize that. So we were raising money. We just needed about 75 Gs. So I could see my bros were working hard. My wife and I, bado tunangangana, we are struggling. We can't give much. So we'd visit my dad in the hospital. Then finally when we were about 75% there in raising the money, and we had been promised the final amount on a certain day, my bro goes to see the doctor. And as he sits with the doctor, I don't know, I was being told this after the burial, but the doctor tells him, at this point, I don't recommend that you buy, because now he was going to see him and tell him, we're waiting for the final amount of money, we'll give it to you so that you can send for the thing. So the doctor tells him, hey, to be honest, there is no need. It was that cancer, esophagus cancer, and the doctor was telling us it has gone too far. It was in the last stages. Fixing it would be a waste of money. The best would just be to ensure that he is able to be taken care of properly until he finally rests. But he still looked strong. The only thing about it was he couldn't eat food. He had to be given a tube. So he was eating some white stuff that would go into him. I went to the hospital to visit him, and on the day I went, my bro had been there earlier, and my dad had somewhat looked like he had suffered a stroke. But by the time I went to see him, he looked like he was a bit better, but he couldn't speak. So we left when he was being taken out for some checkups, and then we went home. In the morning, I got a call. Now the call. And my mom, that was about 5 or something. And my mom told me, now, my son, she calls me Mzee. Now, Mzee, be strong because your dad has passed on. So I'm the guy. I'm the second born in our family. I'm the one who's known to be strong a lot of times. So I told myself here, encourage your mother. So I started to say, Mom, it is going to be okay. We are here with you. But all that came out was, my wife had me cry, but she had never had me wail. Ladies and gentlemen, I wailed and wailed and wailed, dressed up while I was still crying. And we went to the road. Bado man niko na machozi, I'm red. My wife had to call one of our neighbor friends just so that they could encourage me because I was so weak. Got to the hospital and I thought, now I've cried mine, I am done. I am done. And we walked into this room that had been designated for us so that we could all meet there. And I met my younger brother. And I wanted to encourage my younger brother because he's usually very weak. He's not like the rest of us. But as I went to just hug my brother, we were there like fools. And we were both wailing, and we were wailing, and we were asking, why? And my bro plays music, and he was asking, I had promised to come and play for him today. I had told him, why couldn't he wait? And thus began our journey of grief. Then I learned, please, don't tell people, I know how you feel. My head was telling me, Sasino, pull yourself together. Men don't cry like this. But I could not control. It's a feeling up to now I cannot begin to explain to you. You cannot tell people, I know how you feel. You cannot tell people, be strong. It is an impossibility in that time. There is no way I couldn't pull myself together all the way until the burial. I went to view the body when finally now that he'd been prepared, and I was there. And I tried to go and just take it in for me to absorb and be able to understand. And all I could do was lean on the wall because my knees gave way. You see me now, and I know I don't look as buff. But you see, in 4 years of being in high school, I weight lifted like no one's business. So I thought I had strength. But this was an emotion that strength had nothing to do with. Don't tell people you'll get through this. Because at that moment, no one thinks they will ever get over it. And actually, some research I was doing says, no one actually gets through. No one ever gets over loss. Please, don't tell people, don't cry. Because as I mentioned, I was telling myself already not to cry. But my heart and my emotions knew nothing about not crying. You know those ones, it's like an out-of-body experience. You're touching your tears and you're wondering, what are these? Where are they coming from? And lastly, don't tell people, it's okay. Because the truth is, it is not. And it won't be for some time. Yeah, you spoiled it for me, I guess. Because being able to talk about grief and not allow for us to go through the emotions will be a failure on my part. Because the truth is, grief is not something we control. So allow me to take you through quickly, because again of our time, a few stages of grief. This was now some research I was doing from a lady called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and David Kessler. You can find this on grief.com because this was just one of the ones. They have some that are 7 stages, others that are 6, but I thought the 5 encompassed everything that I thought we needed to learn today. I will read the Bible. All right? I know youth workers mnafikirianga hawa hata huko chini hawasomangi Biblia. We do. Number 1 step you go through. But please note, it is not in any specific order. And it's not that you go through one stage, you're done, you go to the next. It doesn't work like that. For one moment, you could still be here in anger. The next moment, you've jumped into another one. And the next moment, you've jumped into another one. So don't take them as step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4 and 5. All right? Number 1 is denial. Denial is said to be usually like the first stage. You hear the news, you don't believe it, you want to go and see for yourself. At that moment, probably as I'm looking, we also are in that statistic. We lost our child, and as Martha was under at that time, but as they were cleaning her up, because they still need to clean you up because it wasn't too far along, I wanted to be there and see our baby. But then there was really no baby because it was too early. So it was just blood, 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 and more blood. So it was denial. Before you get to the place where you can accept, before you're able to even understand what is happening at that point, that is where grief begins. You begin by wondering, is it really true? And from time to time, people have been known that when the door to their houses is open, they hope and they think, oh, maybe it's Nani, and then they remember, oh, it's not. Because still in your head, the person is there. It sounds like just a bad story that someone has told you. But denial allows us for an opportunity to be able to pace and see where the whole story will pan out and how it will become. But during this time, as you continue, you will also face anger. Anger, they say, is a very necessary part of the story. Because in anger, then you begin to ask those questions of, but why? What could I have done? I wish I had money then. I would have bought that stent immediately. I had my dad complain about his throat. Why didn't he come to Nairobi earlier? Did he not know that this could be serious? Indio shida ya Wakenya. Wakenya waendagi check up as often as they should. So by the time a problem is found, it is too late. And you're angry at every single person. Because you're wondering, could there have been something I could have done? They said the truth is that anger has no limit. It can extend not only to your friends, the doctors, your family, yourself, your loved one, and the one who died, but also to God. You may ask, where is God in this place? And this is what we'll be talking about today. Underneath anger is pain, your pain. And it is natural to feel deserted and abandoned, but we live in a society that fears anger. That really resonated with me, because at the time where people are angry, and we do it a lot even in church, if someone is angry and they begin to ask, but kwani huyu God, we start to say, where? But it is part of the process, because in this anger, in this asking the questions, they go into another stage that allows them to begin to bargain. Because you begin to ask, okay, God, if there is a way that you can be able to take this away. And you see, for me, these stages were really relevant because they don't only apply to you in stages where someone has died. In the time where you're even losing a job, you're saying, God, nimesikia fununu, nitavutwa kazi. Lakini God, ukikubali tu nieke hii kazi, until mpaka nimalize loan, because saa zingine ni loan sana. Ukinieka tu mpaka nimalize loan, me, I will serve in the church till the day I die. You begin to bargain. You're asking God, okay, God, I know I said some things when I found out. I know. But please, God, please just save my mom. Don't let them die. Oh God, if there's a way, I know you're a God of supernatural. Please raise them from the dead. Now me, I'm a pastor, so it's like being black. I feel it's okay to be able to share pastor stories. So there's a church in Nakuru that when they heard that their lead pastor had died, they congregated and they surrounded him and they prayed for him to be resurrected. Not the first time it's happening. I hear they did the same with, it was Mirima. Yeah, they did the same because they wanted to resurrect their leader. Part of the stages, it's denial. No. This can't be possible. Let us revert to the thing we know and see if this thing will be able to help us out of this. Then after that, once you begin to see like God is not answering, you begin to wonder to yourself, so is this really going to be the way it is? And many are known to fall into depression during grief. Not to say that depression, sasa umechizi, okay, it's a level. Ukiendelea utaanguka, the other side. But many fall into depression. You see, a lot of times we don't know because we do what you're talking about. We go for a week of consoling with the family, and then after that and the burial, we leave them. Now the reality of how alone they are sets in. You will crash. Not because you have a weak mind, but these are emotions that you need for people to be around. And we'll be talking about that even as we continue. So this is not a sign of mental illness. But finally, when the depression has finally run its course, then you will go into the final stage of acceptance. Again, as we said, it doesn't mean that everything now will be okay. It just means that now it is a place you have accepted that this has happened and it is going now to be a part of your life. And says, for some, it never quite ends. Every time I still wonder what it would be like for my dad to be there. What would it be like? I go for functions. I go for, we live very close to my father-in-law, and he's like a father to me in so many ways. And I wonder, in this situation, what would my dad have done? Because that loss doesn't go away. Open with me, James chapter 4, verse 1. I really debated on this because I really do not want to sound like I'm insensitive. Because in coming here, I would have really wanted to encourage us and tell us, how do we go around death? I prayed, believe you me. I prayed about how do you work out so that when pain does come, you handle it like a boss. Because I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to tell you everything will be okay. It's natural for me to want to do that. But the more I read, the crazier it got. I began to see some aspects of the way God looks at life that I really didn't want to see, especially in regards to death. So I'll read these few verses, and they'll sound like they have nothing to do with grief. But then I pray that we will grasp something out of them. So James chapter 4, I'll read from verse 1 to about 9 or 10. What causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? You desire and do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly to spend it on your passions. You adulterous people. There's a verse that uses there's a book that uses a better word. Do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend to the world makes himself an enemy of God. Or do you suppose it is to no purpose that the scripture says, he yearns jealously over the spirit that he has made dwell in us? But he gives grace, therefore, it says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Be wretched and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will exalt you. And I turn to God and I ask, okay, now, is your purpose to embarrass me at NCOR? Because how do I begin by telling people, you adulterous people? How do I talk about grief with a sense of, oh, humble yourself, oh, you're proud, oh, and I really sought to ask God, what is the purpose of this? But he directed me to Ephesians chapter 7, from verse 1 to 4. A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness the face the heart is made glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth or of feasting. You see, God is trying to bring us into a place of understanding the way he sees it, the way he sees grief. Paul, in talking to his people, he says, about those who have slept, I do not want you to be ignorant. And he says, this is what it will be like after. And he begins the story. 3 things that grieving will bring out of us. 3 things. When God allows for us to go through grief, he lets us go through grief because just as James talks about it, he wants us to get to the place where we are humbled. How does God allow for us to be humbled? Ephesians. He says it is important for us to know that this is the way of every man. All of us are going that direction. All of us will eventually pass on. Those who are wise and they know that this is the way it's going to be, they enjoy to be with the mourners, because in so doing and in their sadness of face, then their hearts are made glad, because there is a realization that comes with seeing that another person has passed on. How many places do you go to and people will say, hey, enyewe maisha ni maua. Hey, enyewe life is short. And how many people do you talk to, and when you tell them that so and so passed on, there is shock. None of us ever is ready for when a loved one passes on. And we're there, we're wondering, so what's this? Why are we here? But you see, in that situation, when we are feeling like nothing seems to be going right. Now, when I talk about this, please understand. And Zach called me and asked me, is it possible for you to cover the series on grief, the part for grief in the series Wrecked? I thought, okay, so I'll come. It's a hard one, but I'll come. Then we began the journey with God, and he began to show me how wrecked it can be. So he called me that week. Within that week, one of our members, one of the elders in our church, loses his brother. So they're burying on Friday, so our pastor travels. As my pastor is getting onto the bus, he's called and told, so now someone else in the church, now a member in the church, has passed on. So he's calling me and he's telling me, hey, so now we will need to split up. You go to that house and be an encouragement. So that's what we are doing. So we begin the week of maombolezi in this family. And as we continue, halfway through the week, in the middle of the week, someone within the close vicinity of the church, a neighbor, also passes on. Uko, it's a closer knit community. So if someone passes on, you write a circular or a memo to all the houses and tell them our person has died. So as we are thinking, okay, so now we will need to split between the different churches, because now all the churches get a day to preach, because huyu ni mtu wa hii community. So as we are working on how we will split so that different people can be able to go to different ones of the meetings that are going on, someone else now on a wider part of the community, we hear they've passed on. And we're thinking, what's happening? And then yesterday, as we finish our meetings, again we hear, oh, by the way, someone else, just in the meeting, oh, sorry, some of the members could not come because there is another bereavement. How crazy can it be? So by then, I'm starting to wonder, hey, is it a message to me? You know, there's a place you start to think about it. Maybe niko karibu kukufa. So actually, when my pastor was away, he asked me to preach. And I was telling the people, okay, so now it is important for you to know that as I talk about grief, you understand, you know those preachings when you talk about grief and when you go that week, you pass on and then people will be left saying, na ni kama alijua. So that was me. That was us in our community. It seemed like we are in a tornado of people dying every day. And this has had to be a message that is encouraging me in particular as I prepare to understand that this is the way of all men. And it says in verse 2, and the living will lay this to heart. When we talk about humility, humility comes from a place of realizing that, hey, you know what? I cannot increase my life. Because it is pride that makes me think, if I had a little bit more money, maybe my dad would not have passed on in my abilities. It is pride that is making me think that if I had enough knowledge of what was happening in the medical scene, then maybe I would have dealt with this faster. We sambaza those things when one of us passes on from a stroke, and we send to all the people on our broadcast messages, and we tell them how to know when someone is experiencing a stroke. And not too long after that, we will send out messages of cancer-reducing foods. Because we are trying to deal with a situation that is not under our control. But when you do hear someone passes on and he's looking at, and you're looking and you're thinking, but wasn't he healthy? Were we not with them just yesterday? Then God, in this situation, is asking, please take account of your life. Please realize that you need to humble yourself. Because life is short and you don't have control. In doing this, he's also asking us to submit ourselves to an authority that is greater than our abilities. In the storm, we've been told stories about the eagle. When the eagle sees a storm, it wants to go to the center of the storm. Because in the center of the storm, there is not too much commotion. There's quiet. They call it the eye. Huko kumetulia. Huko, he can be able to just spread his wings and be carried and ride the storm. But a lot of times in our situations, because of these stages that we are going through, it may seem like it is impossible to ride the storm. But you see, each one of these stages, even though it's scientists trying to explain, these stages are asking us to understand that when acceptance comes, it will come when it comes. You don't say now, from today, I am going to accept. You ride the storm. This will need for us to have total surrender, still under humility. Because humility allows for us to say, you know, it is God who has control, and I will allow for him in his sovereignty to decide when I go and when members of my family go. But in James, it still asks us to examine ourselves, to look at ourselves and see what is it in our lives that we need to change. Because the whole purpose of us going through grief as well is for us to understand, if then as a wise person, I need to understand that my time is almost up, then I begin to ask myself, what legacy am I going to leave? Who am I going to be when people are told about me? What will be written? When I was here, we had a very scary lead pastor. And in our meetings, one day we went for a retreat and he sat us down and he told us now, day 1 and day 2 is for writing our eulogy. And us guys are Africans. Someone who tells us that is a witch. But it was a necessary part of the process of us understanding that death will come at any time. And on the 3rd and 4th day, he was asking us, now you guys need to write a will. A will allowed for us to be able to ask ourselves, what will we be leaving for the people behind? Sawa, there's places where you will say, but me, I don't have anything. But then you start to take stock and you realize, hey, enyewe, kumbe hata kagari kaze, naeza pea mutu, by the way. I can write it to someone's name. But the greatest legacy for me, the greatest legacy you could ever pass, the first guy who passed on in our church, when we got to the home, the daughter called us and told us, come. This is a guy who had been very rich. He used to be dropped home. Everyone in the community knew. He was being dropped home. He was being picked. He used to live a lavish life. And one day, he suffered a stroke. And this stroke left him with a limp. So he would walk with a limp as a constant reminder. He's being told, watch. So he's walking with a limp, and before he could fully recover, he was hit by another stroke. And now his whole face sank. He had to constantly walk with a handkerchief to keep himself from drooling. And when people looked at him, they kept saying, hey, enyewe, life can throw you some curveballs. No matter how organized you seem to be. But his daughter called us and said, come. Let me show you. You see, just a day, I think he passed on Thursday. And on Wednesday, he had sent a message to all his family members. And he had said, you know right now, I'm not at the place that I used to be. But the one legacy I know, the one inheritance that I know I can leave to you is the legacy of my salvation. So you may think he had been saved all these years. No. He had just made a decision. When he sent that message is when his family was wondering, kwani he gave his life to Jesus Christ. So he had just made a decision to be a follower of Christ and understood that the one legacy he was able to leave to his family was this one of him being born again. What legacy will you leave? What will people know you for? Will they just grieve and cry for you? Or will they be able to say, we know for a fact, so that the meetings we are having of that Mzee are not meetings of grief, they are meetings of celebration. Because now everyone knows where he has gone to a good place. The wise will think about these things. They will take it to heart and they will realize the time I have here on earth is very short. Because again, God could wipe us out, all of us. And we could say, there was a time there was a massacre. And those ones would look like, those are isolated cases. But as it takes us one by one, it gives us a chance for us to look and say, Haya. So we don't know whose turn it could be next. So we need to take stock of our lives. Let us focus on God. Let us look above and see him even in our grief and in our pain, because it is still possible for you to think even in that situation. Not saying that the situation will go away, but allowing that in that situation you see what God is saying and doing in that season. I like what churches have done now, that in every one of these meetings, people come together and they teach the word of God at the mashakayas or at the funeral meetings. And this allows for those that have been able to come, if they were not born again, then they get an opportunity to be born again. But where are you? What is one thing that God is asking of you in terms of how you live your life that you need to consider in this season as we talk about grief? Because you see, it's easy to just look at it as a storm and to look at it as a time where I am down, but not to be able to see that is an opportunity for us to take stock. He says in Matthew, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." And this constant reminder of, please go. We all need to be there. Let us not hear of people who have been bereaved and leave them alone. It is not only for their sake, it is also for your sake. Go to every single one of those places. He says it is better to be in a house of mourning than to be in a place of feasting. But you know the way we are, Cindy. We like food. We like to eat. We like places that are fun. And what we try to do with these things is numb ourselves from reality of what is happening. Numb ourselves from the fact that we do not have life forever. We have work to do. We have a lot of things that we need to consider before our time is done. The story was told of a guy, a very famous guy, who passed on recently. And it was being told by also a very famous president. Now, what one record, so what nisi name majina. But the president talks about the way he went to visit this guy, or at least this guy called him, and he told him, "Please, come, we need to meet." And this guy was telling him, "Hey, okay." The president told him, "Okay, I'm away, so maybe we can talk on phone." He said, no, you when you come, let's meet." So when the president came, he went to visit him. And as they began to talk, this guy continued to tell him the way, "Hey, I know my time is up. The doctors have told me I have a very short time, so I wanted us to talk." And the guy was telling him, the president is telling him, "Hey, you know what? You tell me, what can I do for you? How can I ensure you get the best treatment during this season?" And the guy is saying, no. Me, I'm past that. Me, I'm done with that. Now I just want you to tell me what will happen with my organization when I am gone. I want you to assure me that the people I leave in my organization are taken care of. Granted, and my wife and our kids. And the president is asking him, "You can't be serious. You are the one dying, but you're concerned about the people you're leaving behind. Why is that?" And he's saying, "Hey," and he told the president, "even you need to begin to consider what kind of legacy you will be leaving behind." Right now, my wife and I are showing our kids the Pilgrims Progress. Growing up, it was the boringest movie we could ever watch. But we are allowing our kids to go through the Pilgrims Progress. In 2019, they've hyped it up kidogo. It's a nice animation that talks about the journey of a Christian. As this Christian is going, and he's headed towards heaven, his family does not want to go with him, so he goes alone. But as he goes, his greatest regret, when he finally gets to a place and he's being asked, "What is the thing you're regretting the most?" And he's saying his greatest regret is that he was not able to convince his people to come with him. And he contemplated, let me go back and tell them so that they know that heaven is real. And one of the people who are directing him are telling him, no, you don't need to do that. There'll be people there to tell them. And it's reminded in the story of the Bible of the guy who goes up, the rich man, and he's asking for, "Please, just take a drop, put your finger into the water, just give me a drop, and come and touch my tongue with that drop." And Abraham is telling him, "No, now, it doesn't work like that. There's a difference. There's space between the two of us, so that can't happen." And he's saying, "Okay, no, okay then. If that is not possible, please, this pain I can bear. This one I can handle. But please send someone to go and tell my family that what is here is very, very bad, so that they don't end up where I am. So that you see, when you think about grief as a pain only to you, and not realize that it covers a bigger picture for God, when if all of this is happening, you fail. You see, we're reading about Revelation, and we're looking at the different churches. And the churches, from time to time, God will tell the church, and he'll tell these people, I know the good things you guys have done. You have been able, for one of the churches actually, he says, you guys, I know that where you are is where Satan has his throne. Sio place mbaya sana. It sounds like Rongai, yeah? I'm just asking, I'm asking. But actually, it sounds more like where I'm at. We went for a crusade the other day, and I had to ask the people we were with, is there anyone here we are preaching to who is sober? Because it seemed like everyone who was passing was drunk. You know the way you go to a place and there's one village drunk? Now that place, everyone was drunk, there was one village sober. You're getting? So, I don't know. But the church is being asked, so you guys, I know, where you are is where the devil has his throne. Yet, you have been able to come through. But he still goes on to say, but I have this against you. That you have these Nicolaitan people. People who are carrying the spirit of Jezebel. And he's going on and he's saying, I am coming and I will come and destroy them. And it hit me. So God understands that these people are suffering. He understands that these people are going through the hardest grief they could ever go through. But he's telling them that what he's warning them against and what he's holding against them is that they have not been able to reach to these guys. See, they perish. Because in the pain you may be feeling, you're thinking, no, now I cannot be thinking about anyone else. But God is telling them, I will come and I will destroy them. And he's putting a responsibility on me at my very biggest time of need. And he's saying, God, please deal with these people. You know we are sitting in where the Satan has his throne. So you deal with that one. He's saying, no. You guys need to be able to tell these people. Deal with them. Tell them if they don't change, I will come and I will destroy them. And that's the responsibility he's putting on us. Please, as I began, I asked you, don't look at me and think I am being insensitive. This was a hard message even for me. Because at times when things are hard, I just want to be given a break. I just want to be told it is okay, sit down and relax. I want to be given a bundle of money and told, please go to Mombasa. No, Mombasa tushazoea. Please go to Hawaii and enjoy yourself. And I would have liked such a message. I would have liked to be told, enyewe, it is okay. During your time of grief, understand that God is patting you on the back and is telling you, relax during this season. When my dad, to finish, when finally it came to the day when we were doing the funeral, my dad's friends came. And I've told you here before, I don't know, for those who at least have been here. Si tulikuwa mababi. My dad was well to do. But by the time he was passing on, he wasn't. And his friends came. And one after another, they undressed my dad. Or not kumtoa nguo really, but on stage. They talked about how badly off he was doing, to the point that it is them who used to give him 50 bob to go and buy a newspaper. And some are asking, kuna siku gazeti ilikuwa 50 bob? And we looked at it and we were thinking, what is this? And by then we were grown up. So between me, my elder brother, and my younger brother and my sister, we could take these guys down easily. We were seated in the front. We could take them down na tuwakanyagilie chini vizuri. But then again, the reminder that in time of grief, there is a place for you to reconsider and think in humility. When my time is done, what legacy will I leave? What will I be remembered for? Those ones, they've done their time. Them, they've gone. But now we have a legacy to live. My dad left a legacy for us. And every one of us are born again. Or at least we understand Christianity in our family. And my dad, every evening, would sit us down and we would sing to God. Now, that has gone to show everyone in our family sings. Me, I can sing, I don't do it. But everyone in our family sings, and they sing well. He did that. But beyond that, he allowed for all of us to have a heritage of a dad who was born again. Someone that when we stand, we can say, we are. For the longest time, we said we've not been discipled because we didn't have someone who was specifically saying, I am discipling you. But then we know that my dad discipled us. He taught us how to sing praise and worship. He taught us how to read the Bible. He taught us how to pray. What legacy will you leave? Let's bow our heads.